West Gippsland sports results, we cross you to Bill Doherty. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Rod, and good evening, listeners. Well, the first semi-final was played of the West Gippsland League was played at Coralin today, when Coralin won their way into the preliminary final in the first 18 by defeating Pakenham 7-10 to 2-6. In the seconds, Pakenham won their way into the preliminary final by defeating Garfield 7-9 to 4-7, and in the thirds, in a high standard game, Warragul 10-4 defeated Longwarry 7-7. Let's take the thirds first. In a great game, Longwarry versus Warragul in the third semi-final, it was a fantastic game of football right from the word go. These two sides are to be congratulated on their effort of the great game they played. The Longwarry and the crowd stood and clapped both sides as they came off the ground for a splendid effort. The conditions weren't at their best. The ground was in great order, but the wind wasn't as strong as it was later in the day. But both these sides of young players adapted themselves to the conditions, and both coaches of these young sides have been congratulated on the way that they have both the sides playing. Warragul 10-4 defeated Longwarry 7-7. The best players for Warragul was K. Kilday, L. Knights, A. Seymour, B. Cleversley, T. James in a very even side. Their goal kickers were S. Keldo 2, L. Keldo 2, G. Munro 2, K. Kilday 2 and T. James 1. For Longwarry, their best player was Peter Knights, their captain. In fact, Peter Knights, their Longwarry captain, was the best player on the ground. A. DeVent was another good player. N. Robinson, D. Upton, J. Holland and Keith Harvey were also good players in a very even side. The goal kickers for Longwarry were J. Ford 3, P. Knights 3 and A. Eckert 1. So Warragul thirds go into the preliminary final against the winners of the Drew and Courier sides next week. In the seconds, Pakenham won the first semi-final against Garfield in the second 18 when they held Garfield down to 1-5 when Garfield kicked with a very strong wind in the first quarter. They defeated Garfield 7-9 to 4-7. The best for Pakenham were G. McWalter, R. Dean, J. Abbott and D. Florence and J. Drake. Their goal kickers were J. Drake 3, R. Sayers 1, A. Stone 1 and P. O'Connor 1. For Garfield, their best players were G. Brenchley, T. Bird, D. Smutter, A. Robertson and P. Stevens. Their goal kickers were G. Brenchley 2, A. Robertson 1 and L. Lupton 1. Then we came to the big game. Coralin defeated Pakenham 7-10 to 2-6. Coralin won this game in the first quarter when they won the toss. I thought the toss had won this game under these conditions. I would say the worst final conditions I've ever seen a final played in the West Gippsland Football League. The wind was at a gale force. Coralin won the toss and they kicked 5-5 to nothing in the first quarter. In the second quarter, when Pakenham had the wind, they bottled up Pakenham in the non-scoring pocket. Even though they didn't score themselves, they'd only let Pakenham's forwards kick 1-3. In the third quarter, the rain started to come down, and I felt at this stage that this could have been the deciding factor. Even though Coralin had the wind in this quarter, Pakenham's defence was outstanding in this term. I thought that they played brilliantly in this term, the Pakenham defence. They put Coralin into that non-scoring pocket where they were put in the second term, and they only allowed Coralin, even with this strong wind, to kick 1-4 in this quarter, even though not scoring themselves. But this left themselves with the opportunity of not letting Coralin get too far away and giving them a chance of making up ground in the last quarter. But this was not so. The rain was very heavy in this third term, and it made the ball very greasy for the rest of the game. In the last quarter, Pakenham done their utmost to make up the leeway, but they just couldn't overcome the long lead that they'd given Coralin in the early stages of the game. Now, I'm not going to say too much myself about this game because I have two very knowledgeable gentlemen as far as the game was concerned in both coaches for the sides, in Trevor Gale from Pakenham and Matty Cunningham from Coralin. But Coralin ran out winners, final scores 7-10 to Pakenham's 2-6. The best players, well, they were hard to pick. You sat down to try to pick out the best players, and then you sat down and tried to pick out the worst players. But there was no worst players because every player on both sides, they done their utmost to win the game for their teams. But I felt that perhaps that when analysing the game, particularly on the Caroline side, I felt that Johnny Deneen, whether on a half-forward flank or playing on the back line, was instrumental in helping to win this game for Caroline. Mick Cosgriff on the ball was another great player. He was very strong ruckman all day, and I felt that I was just talking to Trevor here a while ago, and he said he must have kicked the ball out of bounds at least 18 times. Well, if he had 18 kicks, he'd done a terrific job for his side. Johnny Harrop, their captain, played a wonderful captain's game. The best game I've seen Johnny Harrop play this season, and it was a real ripper. Peter Brain, roving, another good player. Jimmy Summers at centre-half back played an excellent game and a good defensive game under the conditions. The goal kickers, Ronnie Harris was also another good player for Caroline, but every player, as I said earlier, every player played particularly well under the conditions for his side. Now, the goal kickers for Caroline, Warren Wilson, who kicked 2 goals, and these were 2 match-winning goals. The ball was bounced in the centre of the ground, and bang, Wilson put it straight through at the start of the game, which was match-winning football. He kicked 2 goals early in the first quarter. Mick Deneen 2, Mick Cosgriff 1, Johnny Deneen 1, and Peter Brain 1. For Pakenham, I felt that Stan Young on a half-forward flank were playing a defensive. When Caroline had the wind, roaming across the back line, he was perhaps Pakenham's best player. All those Jeff Shellard on the ball, particularly in the first half, he took Caroline's rucks on and played particularly well. Peter Johnson, a great game on a half-back flank. Trevor Gale led his side well and played a real captain's game. Darryl Young on a half-forward flank was another good player. Ray Woods in the back pocket, even though taking a